Thank you very much, and good morning, everybody. I know time is of the essence. Both of you have flights to catch, and I'm sure some people in our audience. So we'll get right into it, with your permission, Mr.
Please.
Minister. I'd like to start with a global perspective on the markets. It looks like geopolitical challenges to oil supply are here to stay. That's just an external reality India has to face. How well do you think the country is adapting to this new reality?
By geopolitical challenges, you cover in that term a very wide range of
Yes.
events that have taken place, those that are currently in play, and those that could take place. In the 5 years that I've been associated with this ministry, you have dealt with, or rather had to deal with, attacks by pirates off the coast of Somalia, attacks in the Red Sea, apprehension that the Strait of Hormuz could face constraints, I'm using words carefully, that the Suez Canal, and a host of things. Fast forward to February 2022, Ukraine,
Yeah.
Russia, Ukraine. Then, of course, in geographic proximity in the Gulf, Iran. So I'm listing these to say that anyone who tries to suggest that there isn't geopolitical uncertainty, I don't use the word term, is living in a different world. But what has happened so far? How have we coped? Before I come to a direct answer on how we plan to navigate this.
Sure.
I think we've coped very well. Each challenge has been converted into an opportunity, both in terms of diversification of sources of supply. From 27, we are buying from more than 40 countries. A very fast transitioning on green fuels, 1.4% to 20% on ethanol, a big push on CBG, green hydrogen, etc. Going forward, I am assured, I don't want to use, less than precise language. Three things that stare me in the face. One, there is more and more energy coming onto the global market, both in terms of crude oil supplies, both in terms of newer energies, and at the end of the day, the geopolitical uncertainty, somehow I am convinced, maybe I'm being unduly optimistic, that policymakers will stop, hopefully, shy of raising the threshold where turbulence goes into large-scale chaos. I hope that happens. Sometimes I myself get up in the morning and say, oh my God, I hope this is not spiraling into that. But to answer your question specifically, and I apologize for being long-winded, we are very well equipped. We are the third largest consumer, fourth largest refiner, fifth largest exporter. In the coming years, from now to 2027, 28, 2030, India will continue to occupy center stage in the global discourse, and I think we're very well equipped, both in terms of ensuring availability, affordability, of course, it depends, but so far we've insulated our consumer from, thing. And ultimately, the sustainability which is a really great story.
You've worn a diplomatic hat for a long part of your illustrious career. Do you see India as well positioned diplomatically to have its say, have its voice heard on the international stage? Because we are in an unprecedented flux. We talk about the world moving from a unipolar to a multipolar order, and God knows what the multipolar order is going to look like. This is going to be a new dynamic for India, isn't it?
Well, I spent 39 years in the Foreign Service and 4 years international think tanking. I've never really been impressed with the characterizations of unipolar, multipolar. But the fact of the matter is, countries are out there in the arena looking after their own interest. But what I can tell you is that, oh, well, at least the outward semblance was that post Bretton Woods, the establishment of the International Monetary Fund, World Bank, the ITO was stillborn because the US legislature didn't ratify it, then became the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade, and now the World Trade Organization. This entire system and fundamentally the UN, it's supposed to be based on a multilateral approach. It is supposed to be anchored in the rule of law. And you do. But if you ask me all these years, has the rule of law been followed? I was in the Security Council when the use of force was authorized in the case of Libya. They should have authorized it in the case of Syria. They didn't. Those countries almost fell apart. Today, I think the real apprehension is our country is going to more and more rely on their own internal requirements, and the external exchanges will take place. You will still have bilateral relations. Those are being completely reworked. Things that I didn't imagine could be possible 2 years ago are actually happening. But is the multilateral system anchored in the rule of law, the UN, is that coming to an end? That's an issue. I hope not. Because I believe, Vandana ji, and I say this with a degree of confidence, that the cynical theory that the multilateral system is only designed for the vulnerable and the middle powers, I don't agree. Even the dominant powers need the multilateral system because they need, and you know, the history of the world can change very rapidly. You can spiral into a problem. I mean,
Yeah.
I was ambassador in Brazil when I'm talking about the 2008 economic crisis, 2007-8. And the UN, it seemed, didn't have an answer for it, but the world got together in the formation of the G20. Because the G20 as a group used to meet at finance ministers level, they upgraded it to summit level, so the countries got together and put it. So if you say that one country alone will solve it, don't even look for causation. The causation may be in the real estate sector somewhere, but the fact is the economic integration that countries are now in, a problem in one can easily lead to a problem in the other. And the other thing is also, I find, countries are able to retaliate in quiet ways, which also are, not without consequences.
Yeah. Dr. Mittal, as Minister Puri alluded to, so India has something to manage in terms of the external markets and the dialogue externally, but also internally, focusing on growing its own energy sector. You are relatively new to your job, but you are not a stranger to the oil ministry, as we know. What are your priorities as you settle into this role?
Um, I think I'll, take a segue from the Honorable Minister's statement and the general position where India is positioned. If you look at our growth rates, we are growing at about 7.5%, 8%. Projected growth is somewhere around upwards of 7%, twice that of the world average. Our energy requirements are going to grow. This coupled with good, future predictions of the oil and gas, hopefully not very high, but we have to fend for ourselves. And so I think there are two pillars where really I would classify, the priorities of the government as have been, told to us by the Honorable Prime Minister repeatedly and, seconded by the Honorable Minister. First is to strengthen our domestic E&P activities. Honorable Prime Minister announced Samudra Manthan. He has told us a number of wells to be drilled, which is, kind of large, huge numbers, and we are, scrambling to, achieve those goals so that India can make large discoveries and become self-reliant. Second is on, being producers for the world. So we already have a large refining capacity. It's going to grow really much higher. Honorable PM announced a number. We are working towards that. We export a lot of products to the rest of the world. So making India's position felt as a good supplier of, finished products. Along with that, we are also putting a lot of effort in integrating our refineries to produce good petrochemicals. So, that's all value addition. We import a lot. So, substitute all of that, make everything domestically. The last but not the least is Honorable Prime Minister has said we have to be green. We don't need to be green because the world is divided in this, but India has chosen on its own, and we have achieved our NDC targets before in 2025, 5 years ahead. And that's because of great progress achieved in the last 10 years, thanks to minister's efforts and the prime minister's effort of ethanol blending. We want to go for CBG, we want to do SAF, etc. The second pillar is using technology. How do we make our operations efficient? How do we improve our logistics? How do we have multiple companies, put them together, and save money for the country? So digitalization, use of AI, uh, really helping the tech part of this industry, which they have not focused that much, but I think we are starting to do that. So these are the two main pillars of our action.
Okay, thank you. One of the terms you mentioned is CBG, compressed biogas. Some of the detractors of alternative energies say that, yes, but these are only making inroads at the margins, like fossil fuels are still here to stay. What's your view on that? And to what extent do you think India can scale up some of these alternative energies and homegrown energies?
So I will just take a cue from our recent meeting with the Honorable Prime Minister, and we spent a lot of time on CBG, compressed by. So look at the attention which is there at the top leadership, that we have to be green. We, Honorable Prime Minister has said we convert farmers from Annadata to Urjadata, which means we convert waste into wealth. These are new technologies. They are stabilizing. We are actually spending public money on experimenting different tracks. If you look at the exhibition today, you will find so many companies of public sector doing green hydrogen in different ways. We are doing CBG using different biofuels, different biomasses. There is a policy intervention in place. We are going to, Honorable Prime Minister and Minister announced that we are going to have a state-wide policy for CBG to encourage states to actually participate collaboratively, because the biomass land comes from the state. Center can only do so much. We can finance a plant, but finally the farmers are in the ground. So all these interventions, I think we are doing roughly about close to 900 tons per day. We are well on our way to do 1% blending of CBG in CGD networks. I think we will do 5% by 2030. That's our goal.
Sounds very promising, and all the best for that. Minister Puri, coming back to you. You've had a very busy, hectic week, very productive week, I'm sure. Among some of the meetings you've had, I hear you've also met senior representatives from Venezuela and Canada. The Canadian minister was with us on the stage on the first day. Both of these are important oil producing and supplying countries. Of course, it's slightly different boats at this time, Canada and Venezuela. How do you see India progressing on continuing to diversify? I know it has already diversified to a fair degree the import sources for crude oil, but how do you see the path going forward?
Vandana, before I answer this, and I'm happy to do that, the point that Neeraj was making, I think the suggestion is not that CBG will take over from, the main fuels. I think the point he's making, and very well, is that whilst traditional energy will remain, the strides we are making in biofuels, we've done from 1.4 to 20%. CBG, yesterday we had a two-day meeting here on that. And what flows out of that, it gives us confidence that more and more emphasis will come on the greener energies, more natural gas, more biomass, more we'll use that in sustainable living. That part is lifting. But I think to be absolutely clear, it's not that fossil fuel is going to go away. In fact, if you don't go on investing in fossil fuels, I said in one of my statements that if you stop investing today, in 1 year alone, the combined production of two of the big suppliers would disappear. So it's an ongoing battle. On Venezuela and
Canada.
Canada, it's Neeraj who had met the Venezuelan delegation. I met the Canadian delegation, he was with me. Look, it's absolutely clear that today there are newer suppliers wanting to sell more to us. We have traditional relationships. In Venezuela, we were buying. One of our private sector companies was sourcing from Venezuela. I think we have some pending issues there also in the pipeline. And I was told very happy that Neeraj was able to take those up with the visiting delegation, and they've assured us that they will go back and do that. I had met the current president, I met her thrice. She had come to Delhi. I'd met her at an IEW event also.
Yeah.
I met her outside India many times. So look, at the end of the day, Venezuela's current production of 1 million barrels a day hopefully will only go up, which adds to the point I'm making that there is more and more oil coming in. Suriname, Guyana, Brazil, this thing. Canada is a slightly different case. It has huge reserves. I mean, you heard the Canadian minister say on this platform, on this forum, that if their southern neighbor has 8 years of reserves on crude, he's got 100 years.
Yes.
Well, make allowance for some assessments here and there, but southern neighbor has huge reserves of gas also. I think the Indian position in many ways is sui generis. We are today a large and growing consumer population. We are very much into imports, where production hours will go up with Samudra Manthan. We are also large exporters, as Neeraj said, we are the 5th largest exporter, 4th largest refiner. Our refining capacity is going up. We will deal with whomever we have to deal with. And I say that with a degree of clarity because the democratically elected government is answerable to its citizens. I mean, in a country of 1.4 billion, mercifully, there was no point last year or in the last few years where there's been a shortage of supplies anywhere. When there were floods in the Northeast, my collaborators took the gas cylinders on their shoulder and delivered them. Today, we have one of the lowest energy prices in the world. Global turmoil or uncertainty, as you said in the first question, that has never been passed on to the consumer. In fact, whilst LPG, which is clean cylinder gas available to a household, which is a beneficiary of the Ujjwala scheme for as little as 5 rupees in a day, and to non-beneficiaries 13, 14 rupees a day, the company supplying it ran up bills of something like 30, 40,000 crores. I think 39,000 crores, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
But they never passed that on to the consumer. What happened as a result? We will compensate them. We've already announced in a phased compensation. You know, much that I admire the private sector, and I'm a great supporter of the private sector, this kind of activity by the state sector, by the OMCs, is in a class apart. I mean, how do you ensure that a large population of 1.4 billion, right, has not felt any turbulence in the domestic market? And, you know, our retail outlets, by the way, Vandana, have gone up beyond 100,000. And my OMCs tell me, and I'm going to say this publicly, they are looking for providing those which they run out of the 100,000, a more pleasurable consumer experience. They want to raise their revenues, non-fuel revenues. And I'm their minister, but I'm also very appreciative of what they are doing. Many of them are now looking at establishing arrangements where they also take part in trading arrangements. Okay, these are things in the works. They are also today diversifying. I mean, it's a global phenomenon, but I see these companies doing it. ONGC is looking at small modular reactors. When you were talking about the Canadian, they want to sell more oil, more gas to us. We are buying some. IOCL has an investment there. And British Columbia, they're setting up 6 liquefaction plants. They'll be able to extract it to sell it outside or wherever. Overall, the structure of the companies is also broadening. Okay, by the way, this facility was built in 13 months. It was the product of an exchange, of an idea that you got 250 acres, why don't you build something here? They brought the Prime Minister here in 1 year, and after that, now it's taken off. So I think the oil companies, the oil marketing companies to whom I pay a tribute, and to Engineers India, etc., they are actually performing outstanding service in this whole process of energy transition. And by the way, they're doing very well also. It's not that they were subsidizing, they get compensated for that. If you look at their, the market position, they're doing very well. And that's how it should be. But considering that energy is the lifeline of not only our economy, every economy, considering that 22-23% of the government's revenue comes from there, I think this is a very good sign.
Your point is very well taken, and I completely am on board with that India has insulated a very large consumption base from whatever turmoil has happened in the external markets. And indeed, as you say, the ecosystem of all of India's oil companies. And on that very, very optimistic and hopeful note, I would like to thank both of you, for answering my questions. And please join me in thanking both the gentlemen. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well done.